After Chris repays me the month of April on March 29, and that Nicole Walker blocks me 2 days later while I was trying to help her, comes April 1st. That day was the deadline for me to provide a written assurance on the notice of cease and desist. I never provided any written assurance of any sort. You know what happened? Absolutely nothing. On April 30, I receive another transfer of $17.75, but then comes May 31st. He sends me $15.36.09. If you think I accepted this amount, you're wrong. I declined it, because it's not the amount that we agreed on in the first place. He tried to break the contract behind my back. And you know what he did the very next day? He sent me the exact same amount. I declined it again, and I also opened the case at the small claims court, and I tried to serve them by registered mail. They never picked up that mail. I opened another case in which I'm asking for even more money, but this time, instead of serving them by registered mail, I decide to serve them by hiring a paralegal. My first attempt was on June 15. It failed. Nobody answered. Was there really no one in the room? We don't know for sure. My next attempt was 3 days later. It failed again and again. Was there really no one in the room? We don't know for sure. Before I tell you what happened next, you must know that during my time at Toronto Film School, me and my classmates made up a group chat on WhatsApp, and you must also know that we were coming back from 3 presentations of our theater play in which I played Mr. Memory. On June 22, I start to receive some texts in our main group chat, and Emily Larman was sending videos of her watching the play, and I recognized the walls and the furniture in the background. I know I lived in that apartment for 2 weeks, so I sent an email to my paralegal really quick. He went there immediately. Knock, knock, knock. Nobody answers. He calls me and he tells me there's nobody at the door, and I insist. I swear to God, they're in there. They're sending videos in the group chat on WhatsApp. They just don't want to answer. Emily Larman called the security of the building. So then, with the security, she answered the door. My paralegal introduced himself and he said that he has some court documents for Chris and Melissa, but Emily refused to take them. So what he did, he took the documents, he left them just by the doorstep, and he left. How the small claims court works: you have 20 calendar days after being served to provide a defense. You also have the right to not do anything. They did defend themselves within 20 days. I'm not going to waste my time or yours reading my plaintiff's claim, because it is exactly what I've been summarizing to you for the past 3 videos. But here are the main lines. The signature of the loan agreement, calling out on Chris's March 25 BS letter, Emily Larman and Nicole Walker's complicity, and a breakdown of the $7,855 I'm claiming. On July 7, Chris serves me his defense, even though the lease was solely under Chris's name. Me, I see 2 names on that lease. So already there's a lie about this. September 19, Matthew sends via text to Chris his notification of intention of moving out of the property by the end of the month. Matthew has asked Chris not to notify Melissa on this information. Reasoning is unknown. They actually did know the reasoning. However, the major issue with his 11-day notice is that it does not follow the agreement in place. Let me remind you, in his previous letter, he admitted that the lease has no purpose for myself. Upon completion of the 1-year lease, we also must give the landlord 60 days notice if our intention was to move out of the property. This doesn't apply to me. So that was his explanation for keeping 2 full payments. Upon Matthew arriving at the condo, he proceeded to hand Chris the loan agreement document. Chris willingly signed, however, he did so under duress from Matthew, as he was not willing to leave the condo without that document signed. Chris felt he had no option at that point but to sign. This is what Chris is describing as coercion. I'll let you decide for yourself if that's really coercion. However, Chris had written in a clause stating he wanted to a lawyer review the document. That's another thing. If he really did sign this under influence of coercion, why did I let him write this clause? The legal representative that he reached out to did not get back to him within the time frame given, thus understanding that the document became null and void as it was left open-ended. So what he's saying basically is that because he failed to respect his own clause that he gave to himself, I'm the one who needs to be punished. Chris does acknowledge that it would be reasonable to assume that he should pay Matthew some of the funds back to him. Now he's admitting that, but in his letter of March 25, I did not have the right to this money. If his letter was legit and perfectly legal, he would admit the amount that I declined. But no, he admits the whole scam. At the end of all of these allegations against Chris and Melissa, there was and is zero malicious intent against Matthew. After this and this, do you really believe that there was zero malicious intent against me? Chris Putaro will concede. I really love his choice of word here. Concede. And pay Matthew $5,325, which is the full amount of upfront unused rent that Matthew prepaid to Chris and Chris to the landlord based on their lease agreement. When we think about it, Chris has two defenses. His March 25 letter and his official court defense. Both defenses contradict one another. Indeed, in his March 25 letter, his argument for not following the loan agreement is that allegedly I forced and threatened him to sign it, while in his official defense, his argument is that his lawyer did not reach out to him in time. Please also know that during Matthew's short occupancy in the condo, he invaded Melissa's privacy by going into her room, taking her possessions and flaunting them during their class online via Zoom. As most could imagine, this would be deeply concerning for a female to have their male roommate do against them. Why did they accept that I became their roommate in the first place, if now having a male roommate for a female is becoming an issue? It wasn't when we moved in. Not only did Matthew do that, he as well used her shower and personal shower items, while Matthew has his own fully functioning shower bathroom. Matthew did fully admit to those actions. We also assume that unknowingly he damaged her brand new Bose speaker, which was the item he was displaying during the Zoom class. Neither Chris or Melissa mentioned this to Matthew regarding replacement. There's three things I want to say about this segment. First, none of what he's saying is true. If it was true, he would have talked about it in his March 25 letter, and he wouldn't say that they did not mention this to me regarding replacement. If they never mentioned this to me, it's because it never happened. Second, even if it is true, let's suppose it is. According to them, that's the worst thing I did at the apartment. I'll let you decide what's worse between doing this and trying to steal $10,000 from someone. And last but not least, how in the hell does this has anything to do with the main issue, which is the money they owe me? This defense did not contain one single evidence, especially regarding to this statement. As stated from Matthew, Chris did not pay any of the money to the landlord via post-dated checks, as he does not have possession of checks. All funds to the landlord were sent via wire transfer. In the lease, page 4, clause 1. Tenant agrees to provide landlord with the deposit for the first and last month's rent by wire transfer. So maybe the first and last month of rent were sent by wire transfer. It's written in the lease. But the second clause, tenant agrees to provide landlord 6 post-dated checks. On July 22, I go to court to schedule a settlement conference because he only wants to give me back the money that was due according to the loan agreement he tried to break behind my back. From that point on, I considered it a walk on the beach because it was in the hands of the court. If only it were that simple. On September 2, I made a very important phone call to the realtor who sold that apartment to Chris and Melissa in 2021. I wanted proof that Chris really sent that money by wire transfer. And what she replied is, it's actually Chris's responsibility to provide that evidence. And she suggested me we can call them and ask them if they want that information disclosed. I never got back from her. So I'm assuming that they called the Putaros, but they declined to disclose that information. If they really did that, then it's really telling. After that phone call, I started to notice some really weird behaviors from my classmates. The best example was a very good friend of mine who started to completely ignore me. At a time, she was hanging out more and more and more with Emily Larman, who was still living at Melissa's apartment. This is when I started suspecting that something very, very, very fishy was going on. That's when I was suspecting, okay, Melissa is probably spreading rumors about me. My friend is the only person out of those 5 people which I am keeping the identity concealed. The reason is very simple. She never directly participated in the conspiracy. She was simply dragged into it at the very end. Finally, on Halloween 2022, She just completely blocks me on every social media, and I have no explanation whatsoever. It's impossible that Chris and Melissa and Emily and Nikki are not behind this. I don't make a big deal about it, so the time goes by, but then comes April 2023. I receive an email from the court stating our settlement conference is scheduled for June. I present myself to the settlement conference on June 12th, and so do Chris and Melissa. The first thing Chris tells me is, why don't you accept the money so we get this over with? Let me remind you that he's the one who set up all those shenanigans to not give me back my money. He doesn't want his actions to have any consequences, and it's during the settlement conference that I accused them of spreading rumors about me at Toronto Film School. I don't actually have any proof that they did that, but when I made those allegations, do you know what they did? Absolutely nothing. If those allegations were not true, they would have at least have just the tiniest reaction. So how did the settlement conference end? Chris agreed to give me back what he admitted, plus $500. The only reason we settled for $500 is because the judge told me that if we go to a trial, the court would not allow me more than $500 anyway. If it wasn't for that, believe me, I wouldn't have settled for less than $15,000. He said the transfers will be $1,000 every day for the next 5 days, then $325, and then the next $500 would be on July 31st, a month and a half later. Why would he wait a month and a half to get $500? It actually doesn't matter because not even 1 hour after the conference ended, he refunded the whole amount in one transfer. So I don't know what other shenanigan he was trying to pull off here, but he was able to refund me the whole amount in 1 day. I don't know about you, but I believe that the $10,650 that I transferred him in the first place, Chris Putaro had that whole money with him the whole time. He didn't spend a single penny of it on the apartment rent and just wanted to keep it for him. That's what I think. I might be totally wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you took the time to watch all 3 videos until the very end, congratulations, you're very patient. Also, thank you to William Kage for the music. Take care.